Well, happy Friday, everybody. Roz McCarthy here with Can I Talk with Roz, and I'm so happy to have you guys on today. We are now live streaming on Facebook, on LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. And so make sure you plug in. Follow us on YouTube, of course, for Can I Talk with Roz. But we have an amazing conversation today. Plug in, plug in, plug in. Make sure that you are sharing with your friends. Let's have this conversation. It's super important because we have a state that is like literally growing like crazy when it comes to the cannabis industry. And so we are saying hello from the Prairie State. Didn't even know that Illinois was called the Prairie State until I looked it up. But it's the state of cannabis legalization in Illinois. And I got an incredible guests that are on with us today. I just want to read something for you right quick before we get started and with our folks. And this comes from the Cannabis Business Times. And it says that Illinois adult use cannabis sales reached $1.38 billion in 2021. The state also set a new record in December when adult use sales hit $138 million. And this was an article that came out January 7th of 20. So this is actually 2022, where Illinois adult cannabis retailers sold $1.38 billion worth of products in 2021 and set a new record in December when adult use sales hit $138 million. 2021 sales were more than double those in 2020 when Illinois first launched its adult use sales and logged $669 million in total sales. Illinois' 110 adult use dispensaries sold more than 30 million products in 2021, and December sales were up 14% from the previous month. So that tells you right now that Illinois is, that was 2021. We don't even have the 2022 figures yet, and they should be coming out soon, but that's just the opportunity. And so again, I have some incredible guests coming in today. My first guest is Ken Saffold. Sorry, Ken. And Ken is U.S. veteran. He is a veteran, U.S. Army. He's an advocate. He is for social justice. But not only that, that first batch of 185 licensees that were licensed in the state of Illinois, he was one of those that received his dispensary license. So I want to welcome Ken to the stage. Hey, Ken, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. I know I may not have covered everything, but you're going to get a chance to talk to everyone. Next, we have this powerful sister. Every time I see her, her energy just like we just navigate towards one another. We hug one another. We love one another. She's the executive director and founder of SEEN, which is Social Equity Empowerment Network. She's an advocate. She's a lobbyist. She's a licensee in the cannabis industry. She's now a new board member for MCBA, Minority Cannabis Business Association. She's someone that's serious about this industry and serious about making sure that equity is a priority. Please, you guys, make sure you welcome Miss Felicia Royster. Hey,
Hey
Felicia.
everyone, how are you? How are
Wonderful.
you? Look, I'm hugging you from
I
Chicago.
know for Chicago, all of it. Listen, I'm in Florida where it's raining and kind of chilly right now, but yesterday it was nice and warm. So I wish I could give you some of this Florida sunshine, but so happy to have
Please,
you.
We need it.
thank you for having me. Thank you.
Exactly. And our last person we have on for today is the executive director for the Illinois Independent Craft Growers Association. I met this young lady almost 4 years ago at a boot camp that we hosted. She came in with her dad. She was very motivated, and she ended up coming out of that boot camp, going through the process, winning a transportation license, then start to be this incredible advocate, this incredible Latina who's like, listen, I'm not playing with y'all. Like, I'm here, and we're gonna make sure all this happens. And she's an operator, an advocate, and a dear friend of mine. Make sure you guys help me welcome Elizabeth Vargas. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you? Can you hear me?
Happy Friday, everyone. Such a pleasure and honor. Yes, through
Happy
time and
Friday.
space, you'll
Happy
always
Friday.
have a cheerleader in me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with the ladies first. So Elizabeth, I gave a little small intro. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody, where you are located in the greater part of Illinois, if you're in Chicagoland, where you are, what you're doing right now, and what's your focus and your priorities when it comes to you and your business.
So, a little bit about me. I entered the cannabis space here in Illinois in 2016 as a marketing director for a medical cannabis dispensary. So, I really got to see the inception of the program and ultimately was really inspired to focus on the ancillary side. So for so long, I was in marketing, I was pushing folks to jump in on that end. And then, as fate would have it, in 2019, when the state announced the new round of licensees, I am the daughter of a trucker. I always say my dad's CDL paid for my bachelor's. And so it really felt like an opportunity to jump into this space, even though I had at the time left the medical program because I didn't see the opportunity for growth and moved on to tech. And so ultimately, one of the things that drove me to go after the license was the fact that there wasn't enough ownership and that I had really seen the insights of not only running a dispensary, but growth operations. Like it was a huge privilege to jump into that market at that time. And I was able to gather so much information. Currently, I serve as the executive director for the Craft Growers Association. So after, in that round of winning a transportation license, all these new 4 new license types came to be. And so my focus has been on allowing, the growth and fostering community for the craft growers, but also bringing together all license types holder. Myself as an operator who, after 3 years, we're barely seeing folks come online. And so a lot
Yes.
of the conversations that I'm having is how can we pull together our resources, our knowledge, and really not only expand the market, but also serve as, leaders in a new ecosystem, because that's what we need.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that more about, I know there was a strong intention with Illinois in not only community outreach, community impact, but also making sure that the marginalized businesses, social equity businesses, get an opportunity to be in this landscape. And I really want to understand, has it happened? Is it really, are we starting to see the proliferation of people being able to actually have their businesses up and going? That 1.8 billion, or I'm sorry, $1.38 billion, are we seeing that come through our businesses, right? And so, Belisha, same question for you. Tell everybody where you're from, how did you get into the industry, and what are some of your priorities right now and the things that are the most important to you right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you for having me, and thank you for highlighting this conversation. I think that Illinois is a very important state, not only because it's in the middle, and as my good friend always says, it's the heartbeat of the nation,
It is a
but
hard.
also because we've also in the cannabis world coined it as kind of the Silicon Valley of cannabis, because most of the multi-state operators, some of the heaviest ones or highest grossing ones, are headquartered here in Chicago, which is where I hail from. I'm born and raised here. I'm very passionate about Chicago. Scene was started as a national organization, but started here, based out of Chicago, and was born because of the problems and inadequacies that existed within the social equity whole realm. And so I started back in 2017, really looking at the legal industry. I won't age myself in talking about how long I've been around cannabis, but when we called it weed. It was weed and reefer back then. So I'll just say that. But as many names as it is, it's one plant, and it has so many different components to it, medicinal components, and now an educational component, because we need to reshape what it means for everyone. And so I began being passionate about that as I recognized how largely this whole legalization was moving. And so that was back in 2016. As a result, I started kind of looking at CBD and kind of looking at the opportunities that existed. And quite honestly, as my colleague Elizabeth talked about, uh, marijuana has been legalized and cannabis has been legalized since 2013, earlier in the medical program, like she discussed. And so at that time, no one really knew about it in the Black community. There were probably half of, the elite that were even involved, and that was across the board. There was probably one company that had some African American ownership, and that since was sold out. And so there was no buzz about the legalization. It was just legacy world and my world. And so as it matured, and I recognized this is a thing, and social equity is a thing, I dove in head first. Became an applicant, applied for a dispensary, and then there was a lot of issues with social equity, to your question. And so that's kind of what brought on my advocacy work, what brought on SEAM. As a result of my advocacy work, I did register as a lobbyist. And that provided me the opportunity to work heavily on policy in Illinois and really get familiar with what the inseams of what we really need to be doing to make sure that equity exists. And so that's what my passion is. And I am excited to expand that on a national level, as you mentioned, recently being appointed to MCBA as well. SEAM stands for Social Equity Empowerment Network. We're based out of Illinois, but we're also in California, Virginia, Michigan, Missouri, as well as New York. So we're passionate about just taking this conversation in the business realm as a business trade association to states everywhere, just advancing our education and our awareness of the plant, and not only about its medicinal components, but about how it can be an economic engine for those that were disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. See, now that it's legalized, we have not only been locked up for this, but now we're being locked out of the opportunities to make the millions and billions, as you talked about. So I'm very passionate about this work, and I'm serious about seeing people like us in the space.
Absolutely. And last but not least, we have Ken. Ken, would love to hear you tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you even get that interest and even that desire to go
Mhm.
through and to apply, going after a license, and where you are now in your process?
Yeah, hey, appreciate it. Good afternoon for most. KJ Saffold here. I am from the south side of Chicago as well. Had this opportunity through Belicia, so I do want to say thank you to have
Thank you, Alicia.
connected and to be able to tell
Hey,
my
she's a
story.
connector, man. She's the
Yeah, yeah,
Chicagoland connector. She don't
that's
even
what
know
she
it. She's
does.
a
Yeah,
connector.
that's what she does. So, yeah, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I was directly impacted by the war on drugs. I had family members that were substance addict abusers, and just understood how systemic racism and oppression affected derelict areas. And I always had to, as a young age, kind of understand how to put myself in an environment where the odds would be in my favor, because oftentimes you didn't have a good example, or you didn't have the resources, or you didn't have just a system that was set up for you to kind of be successful. And so that kind of led me into the path that I found myself in the military. After attending high school on the south side, I was accepted into and graduated from West Point, which is like a leadership training institution where after graduating from there you go into the military. So early on, about 22, I found myself in Iraq, leading a platoon full of men from all over the country and doing America's great work in protecting our freedom. And what that kind of led me to have to do is to learn to communicate effectively. I had soldiers and individuals that I worked with that were from all walks of life, and it didn't matter what you believed in or who you believed in. We still had to work together as a team to try to achieve a common theme.
Mhm.
And just with my opportunities in the military, just gave me a different kind of perspective when it came to team building and being able to achieve challenges with limited resources, limited manpower, limited finances, limited time. And I started to kind of, I read a lot. I do a lot of research. I call it YouTube and Google University. And shout out to my wife. 2019, as I was considering transitioning out of the military from active duty, she plopped a paper on my desk that said Illinois was going legal for adult use marijuana. And I was like, man, if it's not me, who can it be? So at that time, I was, and I still am an MBA candidate and pursuing, just trying to find where I would find my niche in entrepreneurship. I had my time in the military leading and following, and I was like, hey, I want to apply some pressure and try to do this for myself, and just started to get into the mix, networking. And that's something that is paramount. If you are considering any opportunity within this industry, your network is your best work.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to establish good relationships, because it is challenging to set yourself up for success and have the support that's needed to navigate these uncharted territories. This is the first time in our lives that cannabis is legal in this capacity, and it's a lot of reasons why it shouldn't have been, and a lot of problems that were created because of that. But nonetheless, this is our time to really take advantage of our network, our access to knowledge and understanding, and just to apply some opportunities to ourselves and to our communities. And so I got lucky after submitting a 350-page application and got my name selected. And I am a 51% owner of a dispensary license here in Illinois. Now, that's where the fun began because that was in 2020, January 2020 is when I submitted that application. We were in lawsuits. We had, the pandemic. We had the social justice issues that were happening throughout the United States. So it was a lot of prevalent issues, a lot of lawsuits. So I had a winning ticket, and I'm seeing MSOs make all these, all this profit, and I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. 2 years, 6 months and 22 days, who's counting later, the state of Illinois said that, hey, here's your 180-day window to get your cannabis dispensary, rolling. And oh, by the way, the black capital firm that has a partnership with the state and donated $30 million for specific social equity businesses is available to you, although the criteria is so scrutinous that you won't actually qualify, nor will anybody else. So we have a fund that's just for us. That's just sitting, and we can't do anything about it. And I'm in an incubator right now with 1871, which is an incubator, business incubator in Chicago. In our first week, we talked about financing, and we had investors on. We had prominent C-suite leaders and different MSOs on, and the theme was the same: it's challenging to get capital, it's challenging to get funding. And so 7 years after MSOs got into the Illinois market, I'm getting my opportunity, but I'm still trying to resource and build good relationships to figure out the way ahead. And that's why this matters, so that individuals understand the opportunity is available, but it is something that you have to commit to and do your best to overcome some of the challenges to be successful.
So I got to unpack all that because
I'm
it's a lot.
sorry. That's how
No,
I
it's
lay it.
okay.
That's
No,
how I
but no,
lay
it's
it.
good. No, it's good. It's good stuff because there's a reality of what's going on in the state of Illinois, and let's just keep it real. And this is going to be a real conversation, real, because I want to read something to you. So, despite the steady growth as Illinois is proceeding into 2023 with caution, as there are several financial developments that already have or likely to impact sales in Illinois. To date, there are 113 adult use cannabis dispensaries in Illinois, including the first social equity. In tandem, there are only 21 licensed full-size growing sites in Illinois. The discrepancy between the number of growers versus the number of dispensaries may not be adequate to keep up with the demand, as prices in Illinois are still the highest in the nation. So if we go back and we think about this, is that there is a tale of two cities, and I call it the haves versus the have-nots. And I would love for you guys to weigh in on the how does it make you feel knowing that there has been this big push to include equity. However, there's not the resources there to be able to bring it to full fruition, to build capacity, to actually be operational. And especially when it comes to the cultivation side, that is extremely challenging. And is there some solutions? So I'll just throw it out and let's have a conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, from a craft grow standpoint, I can speak to it because that was the license type that I was awarded. And so, as a small craft grow, it's similar to what other states consider a micro business. I
Right.
just want to start off by saying what's equitable about the fact that a craft grower has 5,000 square feet, but those 21 cultivation facilities that you named have upward of 200,000 square feet. And in some realms, in the medical realm, they're unlimited canopy space. So just on the surface, the way the laws are situated, they're not equitable.
Right.
That puts small business owners in a position where it's not as attractive for investors. And so that's been one of the main stumbling blocks. And we all recognize that because it's not legal federally, we can't get loans from banks like traditional businesses. And this is a private sector market where you have to go and get money from either your rich uncle, and of course, majority of us don't have one of those, or you have to fundraise. And so, once again, to his point about network, but it's a hard undertaking to raise this type of money for these
Yeah.
businesses. So, making them as attractive as possible is key. And to the point that was brought up, we have a fund that is basically there, but the process is not very fluid. It's not streamlined for people to actually apply. There are hurdles in which are quite frankly unreasonable, as he mentioned, that the average person cannot even adhere to, and some of the parameters surrounding the loans instead of grants are just ridiculous. So with
Right.
all that being said, it's like without having the proper channels in place to actually support the small businesses, because that's what equity truly is. I was talking to a grower out of California, one and he made a wonderful parable, and it was basically, when you think about football programs and equity programs in any other industry, if you think about a football scholarship, they're giving that student everything that they need to be successful. They're giving them room and board, they're giving them a scholarship for their tuition, they're probably giving their mom a home. You know what I mean? When you think about all of the money surrounding and how we want programs to look, how it looks when we want programs to be successful. And that's just not what I see here. I have seen them taunted as if it was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. But in actuality, out of the 100 and over 115 licenses that exist, like you said, only two of them are, well, now three are social equity dispensaries. And of course, they're uniquely positioned probably because they've known from the beginning, but there's only one craft grow that's open out of 88 being released. So those numbers are alarming when you talk about the number of people that need to be standing up. What is it? And it has to be a lack of resources.
Yeah. Yeah. It's alarming. It's alarming that out of 180 something retailers that went for a license, only three are operational. And also on the craft grow side, only one craft grow. Elizabeth, you're in the transportation side. How's things looking for you and your family in the use of your license? And then also your role with your organization, which is the Craft Growers Association, Illinois Independent Craft Growers Association. How is that playing out? What's the energy around the folks that you are representing in your organization?
Add to what Alicia's saying on the craft grow side and say that, realistically, the program itself, one of the things that we talk about is the way that it was rolled out and how the spirit of the law is being implemented. And so the spirit of this act was to allow for minority ownership, specifically in these license types. And the biggest struggle has been that there is a failing in the program. I mean, we need to call it what it is. The program is failing. Oftentimes we're getting communication in piecemeals, so there is no clear direction up on top. Different license holders have to talk to different departments. So there's so many people that are involved that are trying to do their best. On the craft grow side, is specifically what Belisha outlined. The market is not there. Same for the transporters. They had a recent round of transportation license. It's not enticing to bring up about a business with overhead and all the compliance and all the costs and to be required this cannabis when many of the big players want a transportation license. And even if you do the math, the number of transporter licenses there are now 222 to the amount of dispensaries as well as craft grows. It's not there. It's like less than 2 customers a person. So what I think needs to happen realistically is a coming together of a legislation, because and Belisha has so much expertise on this, because I have been on the non-plant touching side for a reason. And I tapped in when I applied to be a transporter because I did believe that there was an area of opportunity. As an entrepreneur, as someone who believed in the medical program, because I saw so much benefit on the patient side, right? I was doing the marketing, so I saw the benefit on the patient side. When you see the obstacles on the operation side, it makes no sense. And it has to be said that it's because we're disrupting the status quo. It feels like the medical program, it's like medical program 2.0, because recreational sales hit 1.5 for 2022, and there was no Black or brown ownership in that. And when we talk about the program, there's focus on the social equity and the rosy aspect. I believe in duality. We can celebrate people really pushing through and getting to it and opening, because I think that's important. But we could also talk about the fact that there's people livelihoods at stake. You know, I was able to bootstrap. I hate that phrase because it's always applied to our communities when the circumstance and the context is so much different. But I was able to get my license for a fraction, like 10% of what I've heard other people get it. I've been able to really go about building other businesses, working for the association, being an advocate, to where I'm not relying on this transportation license to be viable. There's people whose livelihoods, like day to day, each day that goes by, like they're in thousands and thousands of dollars that they have not seen a return on. And I think that's unfair. The one thing that I'll add to this point is the state is collecting fees. The state is collecting fees for all these license types, regardless of not whether they're operating. I will say that there was some progress made. They did an installment plan, so instead of paying us up front, pay us in quarterly fees, right? So it's a give and take.
Yeah, yeah. I will say this, that I reading further. It says in November, Illinois state officials announced a new $8.75 million forgivable loan program. Hold on one second. Cannabis loan program. This is likely in response to the complaints that the pre-existing state loan process, which utilized two private companies, was slow, restrictive, and difficult to navigate. So this article is addressing the fact that whatever infrastructure was put in to help fund these operations, the first thing was not working. It was restrictive, it was slow, and there was complaints. And so they're identifying 8.75 million, but how much tax revenue has been, if we're talking about now, our new sales figures for 2022, I have that now, is 2022 was 1.55 billion and 2023 was 1.78 billion. And so that was like a 13% growth. So where's that tax revenue going? Can somebody tell me where's that tax revenue that was 2 years ago? That tax revenue was non-existent for the state of Illinois.
Well,
So it shouldn't go to replace current budgeting issues. If we, as advocates and folks that are in this industry, how do we hold our lawmakers accountable to the fact that you have this brand new tax revenue, and that tax revenue should be allocated towards supporting the businesses who need to thrive and survive, and to start to diversify the different operators there in the state of Illinois. And I'll leave it right there, and would love for anyone to jump in. Ken.
yeah, yeah, if I may. So approximately over the last year, 2022, there was $445 million in tax revenue that came away from that 1.5. And so when you start to kind of peel back the onion on that, as I understand, as a operator, that we have to have a community engagement clause within our budget as an operator. MSOs apparently are held to the same standard. The municipalities that have dispensaries in their location, in their area, are receiving some of those tax benefits as well as that tax revenue. But then you start to look at over the disproportionately impacted areas, which is
Mm-hmm.
a proxy for saying the hood. There are no dispensaries there, which means none of that tax revenue is going there, which means that those that were most affected by the detrimental impacts of the war on drugs are not getting any benefits of the benefits that are currently available to the overall populace. Since 2001, 8.1 million people have a cannabis crime or have been incarcerated for such. Approximately 66% of those people are Black or brown. Okay, so you go down to the Silicon Valley of cannabis, downtown Chicago, and you have three or four multi-million dollar businesses. But right down the street on Federal or 26 in California, you got people whose entire lives were stricken, communities that lost leaders for the exact same operations that's going on right now. And so what has to be said is that in order for anything to work, it doesn't matter if we're talking cannabis, if we're talking politics, if we're talking, food resourcing and sharing, there has to be balance. And
Yeah.
that's the challenge. There are individuals that believe that the same practices that have given advantage or provided additional opportunity where others did not have it, coming in with the same mindset, with the same construct. This is a different game, and what matters most is that it's the laws of nature. So as much
Yeah,
as an individual may want to bring an old construct that was systemic and oppressive in a manner, in a way, cannabis is of the earth. And in order to grow quality product, you have to breed quality. You have to be of quality. So if you don't have that inert, if you don't have that integrity, it's going to show. You're seeing businesses right now across the nation that are not sustainable, and they are not successful in what they thought would work, because what worked yesterday is not what will work for tomorrow. In order to understand cannabis, you got to understand the culture.
sure, sure. I guess my point is that you just quoted a number, $445 million of tax revenue for 2022, or for,
Right.
let's say it was 2021, right? With that being said, the new loan program, that's a forgivable loan program, is 8.75 million. And so my thought is, how do we get lawmakers to introduce new legislation at the state level that really balances out that from an equity standpoint? At least it would be nice to see a fourth of that tax revenue go back into those businesses. So that would be theoretically $100 million versus $8 million. And I don't
And
know how.
that's you just said what I was gonna say. This math is not mathing here, okay? I
It's not
mean, out of
mapping.
the money that is has been assigned, which is 25% of the overall funds. So there's 25% of the tax revenue that's supposed to be carved to what is called the R3 program. There's still
Yes,
programs there that have not received the funds that they were allocated in order to do the programs that he talked about as far as community engagement, so that at least, even though there aren't dispensaries in those areas, some of the programming can trickle down to those areas. That has been
right.
unsuccessful. And when you're talking about the funds, the loan that is currently in place, that's also supposed to pull from a bucket of money that's allocated specifically for social equity businesses, is for operations. This particular announcement that you're speaking of the 8 million, ironically came the day after our governor was reelected. And so there was an announcement that was released as a result of
It,
that, that
it
states that
was.
there's this additional money. But since then, there's been no direction, no clear pathway, no process, no contact name, no contact number on how we can actually get this money. And as a small business owner, that's a license holder that's trying to get to the point, and we had the disadvantage of applying in the midst of a pandemic as well. So
Sure.
at that moment, we applied in a pandemic. Like he said, we waited. Right after that, there was legislation that stopped and halted everything. There was time for planning. So at this point, from our vantage point, we're asking. There has been attempts in legislation. There's been CBD funds. We've had some grants that have been given on the city level, just literally a couple. The county in this particular area, only one county within the whole state, which is Cook County, which is where Chicago is.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Is trying to do something surrounding land, which is awesome, and surrounding some type of fund, which is also okay. But from a state standpoint that has access to all of this tax money, there has not been not one person that has actually received a check in the mail. And so that's a real problem. And so I am suggesting that we enact some legislation surrounding extending what they already have, which is a CBD fund in the law, which will
Mm.
allow not only for the state to allocate money, but it will also allow for the current operators, the MSOs, which are really primarily MSOs, to still incubate and put up a fund and do some of the things to supplement until the state gets this
So,
thing rolling.
and I was going to say that. So remember when you guys were going through the whole craft grow, and then you had some commitments from MSOs saying, "Hey, we'll incubate and we'll hire X amount of people." And did that happen, or like, are we still waiting for the promise of that? Are they living up to those commitments? And then what's the check and balance? Like, if you enact legislation, and then, or if you enact a program, who's responsible for making sure it's executed on? And what can we do as advocates? Do we do a write-in campaign? Do we do a change.org, and we drive that together as multiple organizations coming together to say, I see you, and getting
All of the
people to sign
above.
off on that. Like maybe
Yeah.
that's what it takes right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's all of the above, honestly. I think that the more that we resound this, you know what I mean, and we ring this bell, we bring attention to the fact that this is a failure. To Elizabeth's point. And I think that ultimately, if we want to see some success, if we actually want to see business owners that are brown and black that look like us on this line, it's imperative that we give us some money. That's just the
Yeah.
bottom line. There's
Yeah.
funding that is needed, and we need the funds in order to do it. And the fact that we are making publicity stunts, you know what I mean, to announce $8 million when clearly there should be 50 million, double digit
No,
millions.
it should be
Yeah,
if we can look at it, you got new tax revenue that came in that was not
yes,
there 3 years ago. So do not go and absorb that tax revenue to then transition or to utilize it for other different departments. First and foremost, you like just like when you're on an airplane, it says the first person you take care of is yourself.
that's
Put
right.
your face mask on, and then you take care of others. In order to have
Exactly.
a viable, diverse, equitable industry in the state of Illinois, you got to take care of the elephant in the room, of the people that need their face mask first. And that's where the money should be pulled down from. And that's the argument that we should be having, I think, and maybe not
Absolutely.
even an argument, but how do we all collectively? That's why I wanted to bring you guys together, because I do think, as we're in the heart of the start of Black History Month, it is extremely um, disheartening to see that there's only three retailers that are social equity and one craft grow out of 390 something people. And I know there's some transportation ones as well, but just, I mean, up and operating right now. Like it really is, it just, it does something to you that is, and so that's just
And
my,
Rod,
my
and
position.
and
Yes,
to
Ken.
add to that also, so I was unaware of the process kind of going into the planning for the community engagement from the MSOs, but
Sure.
on the back end, I am now a recipient. I am in an incubator where
Nice.
an MSO had a conversation. Recently, just joined another accelerator specifically at an MSO that kind of gets you out to tours, but that isn't prevalent information. It's exclusive to me because I'm a license holder. And the reason I'm a license holder because I went above and beyond and decided to do something that others, wouldn't decide to do. The same thing as when I served in the military, the same thing as when I went to West Point. And it takes that type of person just to win a lottery, then just to have to still go through all these nuances. And so what it's like to me is I don't know if you all recall, and speaking of Black history, Men of Honor, that Cuba Gooding Jr. movie, when he had to put his
Mhm.
mask together and they took all his box of pieces and threw it in the ocean. He had to put it together and still
Mm,
survive and thrive. Like that's
mhm.
what it feels like. And we're only talking about the business side, those who have the acumen and the knowledge in order to take advantage of right now. We're not talking about the effects of the economy and the mental health and wellness within the community. That it doesn't have to be a fund just for business owners, but we need mental health resources and things that will restore a lot of the injustice and inequities that have transpired in our communities because of the war on drugs. And regardless of if funds ever roll out for business seekers, there absolutely has to be some type of restorative legislative process that says you're mandated to take approximate amount of these funds and build something attached to some community restoration project, or partner with some nonprofit, and you're their sister brother corporation that's going to help implement and act on what we're saying. And there has to be some transparency within the government to show that that's what we're doing. That's how the army works,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
can't say I'm going to do something and I don't show a result of that and say, hey, I took $50,000 and I tried to get there. We'll go to jail, like point blank, period. And so there just has to be some transparency and integrity in this process, or it will never reach its potential, and it will never have the positive effect that it can have on everything that's been imbalanced because of our past.
No, I agree 100%. Elizabeth, you got a comment?
I wanted to say that what is being used against us is bureaucracy. because there is so many things that were written into the legislation. For example, Belisha talked about the R3 program, which in itself on paper,
Sounds good.
restore, reinvest, renew. Hello.
Yeah.
But I think what has been a challenge is because there is no clear direction on that municipal state level, is, different departments don't communicate. There's that lack of direction. But it's like using, what's the word, like willful incompetence. And it's getting to the point where we're all under operational deadlines, as he had mentioned. And a lot of people, because of the pandemic, lost real estate. So that's the other thing too. Not only are you fighting for real estate, you're fighting for access and resources and tools in the middle of, a potential recession. Because I think it's also something that we have to talk about, all the continuous downward pressure. It
Yes.
has been felt like a politics game. I sat in a room with elected officials who mansplain lobbying to me. So I think that, we're running up against time, but we're also, people who are involved just don't have the capacity to do more than we're already doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually in a conversation last night with more the ratio of conversations that I've been having more is with license holders, but I also want to tap into the community, because I think that that is really what's going to make a difference, is educating folks on, like, that is the math, that is the reality of it. But also, I think that if we don't do a better job of personifying the struggle, we're going to lose. Because I
Yeah.
think right now we're getting treated as a whole, craft growers, transporters, and then when folks do open up their business, it's the individual brand. But the program in itself is failing. And I think one of the things that New York, I've turned to New York for some inspiration, because even when I was in the medical pilot program, the thing that inspired me was, like, there's so many other states doing it better. California has their struggles, Washington State has their struggles, but they had, actively taking steps towards it. New York, there's a program now, you win a social equity license holder, you walk through. They've set out, specific guidelines for marketing. The state in itself appears to be more forthcoming when it comes to direction, and it hasn't been the case with us. What has felt, and I mean, I've said it has felt more of like this PR game with our elected officials that want to toe these little wins.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the 8 million unforgivable loans, because there was one round of loans that was unsuccessful. They gave up on it, 2021. I'm sure you can talk about it more.
Yeah,
And then
it's right here. It speaks to it that it was highly hold on one second. It says it was restrictive. It was challenging, to say the least. That there were a lot of problems with it, and so with that, it was difficult to navigate through, difficult to implement, and so that was where the in November the $8.75 million forgivable cannabis loan program was implemented. But I go back to Belisha's point that I thought was really interesting was the fact that this particular loan program was set up right after the governor won his governorship, right? And so I think there's been this kind of like political like pawn of cannabis, and not understanding that this affects people's real lives. I would love for the state of Illinois to have resources set aside for groups like M4MM and other groups, just to be able to do safe access to get your medical card, because there's something powerful of having your card, even though you're in an adult use state. I will tell you, my son was driving and got pulled over by police and had cannabis in his car. He said he had cannabis, but he also said, I'm a medical patient. And I was on the phone with him, and literally that experience could have gone from 0 to 100 real quick. But he was secure in the fact that, you know what, I got rights. I got my, I'm a medical patient. And there's some things that we have to do for our community that we shouldn't have to do, but that we need to do. So it would be nice to see resources put for expungement, not only just the expungement, but are these people okay? Did it actually come off the record? Somebody has to check these things. And so that's where I guess my disappointment of seeing, and also, like I said, only seeing 3 retailers and 1 craft grower that are actually up and operational. It's so disheartening. So that's my take.
I just
there
want to
is
say,
no check and balance. Go ahead,
yeah,
Belisha.
I just was going to say before I go that all of your points. I wanted to touch on your question earlier. There were programs early on that some of the larger corporations did do, but it
Yeah.
was more so in the application process. And now that people actually have licenses, it's kind of like
They're
a day
gone.
late and a dollar short kind of
Yeah.
thing. Here
Yeah.
we are, the licenses are in hand and there are no resources. So there's organizations, to your point, like Sing, like M4MM, like the Craft Grower Association. Elizabeth and we've joined forces to put on a resource fair at the end of this month, just on our own dime, because of the lack of resources from the state. And so we encourage anybody who has resources as far as some of the nut and bolts professional services, general contracting, finance, banking. We're talking about legal assistance, any type of compliance. These are the areas that and pain points that people need assistance with. And so we're encouraging your audience and anybody that may have a network or are interested in the Illinois market to get in contact with Scene, because at this point, it's up to us, we feel like.
Yeah.
And so we're encouraging the state to listen to us, hear us. We definitely are looking to implement policy this go round, this session, because we're starting a new session now, because it's imperative that we provide those funds for people. When you think about the parable about a person, that is exactly right. A person that has been granted this opportunity but don't even have the tools to make it successful, in the bottom
Right.
of the ocean, and the pieces are falling apart.
They're
You know
falling
what I mean?
apart.
That's like the best scenario. That's the best analogy
Yeah,
that you can place to this. And
yeah,
I just encourage everybody, to your point, we all need to chime in. We do need the letter campaigns. We do need the social media campaigns. We do need to be writing to our local officials. We need all national organizations across, because it's a pivotal opportunity for us to really change lives here and really change the trajectory. Everybody in the world sees the national news about what's going on in Chicago, and they're scared to come here because of what's being plagued. This is a beautiful city. We have some of the best things have come out of this city, this state, but specifically Chicago. And
Yeah.
so I was even reading recently, Black History Month started in Chicago,
Yeah.
and I didn't
Yeah.
even know that. So I mean, I think about how dynamic this has the opportunity to be. And when you look at and compare other states to Illinois, and how it was taunted as some of the best things that were going to come out of this, and that we were the first state to actually legislatively enact social equity. Every other state votes adult use in. Our governor came in and wrote it, signed it, and and delivered it. And
Right.
now here it is. We can't even make it be what it's intended to be, what the intent of the law was, because of political bureaucracies. To our points, we
Yeah.
must make this right by making sure that the money that is obviously there, we see the money, gets to the places that it needs to be.
yeah.
And that is to these business owners and to the communities that deserve to benefit from this.
And to caveat off that, if I may, so we are talking about those who want to retain their ownership. There's another conversation that it is less challenging to find somebody to partner with if you want to give up equity. And that's also an entire other fight that has to happen. Uh,
Yeah.
I have challenges right now with trying to retain what I've been able to earn and to see it to fruition. And I'm not the only person. And it's so enticing when they put the cart before the horse and saying if you take it you're good to go. But the conversation is different if we're talking ownership and equity, and it
Yeah.
matters to retain.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of opportunities through networking to really be able to bridge a lot of these gaps and these inequities. I just want to take a quick second to highlight a few other black businesses that are in the cannabis space. So
Please.
yet seen for number one, and Belisha has some information that she probably hopefully gonna let y'all know if she's still on regarding scene. But then you have the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers, which is a professional organization that helps individuals in the legal space kind of understand how to get in, as well as if an individual like me needs some help. They host workshops and different informationals that help people move accurately. Equibus Accounting, it's a black CPA firm here in Chicago who essentially helps cannabis businesses and small businesses as well. He's well versed. Kenneth Mason over there is a really good guy. We've
Kenneth
already
Mason is a good guy. Shout out to
Yep.
Kenneth Mason. Yes,
Yep.
sir.
We've already talked 1937 group, a group of good guys who are trying to ensure that the culture is always close and inculcated into cannabis. And then also, I gotta big up myself right quick because you said I could.
Yes, you
So
can.
Green is the New Gold. This is on Amazon.
Okay, we gonna
You
put it on
got
screen.
Yeah,
Let's get it.
yeah.
Let's get it.
Green is
Let's
the
get
new
it.
gold. So I made a green print. It's challenging, but there are resources, there are options. So I created this from actually a interview that I had and was able to create a small ebook that really gives the individual an understanding of where to start. Hopefully, it's value added, and I was able to get that. Two copies on a bookstore, black-owned bookstore called Underground Bookstore, which is located 1727 East 87th Street in Chicago, Illinois. So I just want to plug everybody I could, and I'm appreciative of this opportunity. And I think that the more who hear this are able to have the confidence to speak up, and we are better in numbers. And also, just to anybody in the industry, doesn't matter if you black, brown, indifferent, MSOs and the likes, there's strength in diversity. There's strength in working together and communicating effectively. If you are transparent and you have integrity, that matters, and that will prove the ultimate success or failure of what your endeavors are. So I just want to
Yes,
leave with
yes,
that.
yes, yes. Well, you named off some great things. Belisha, I see you, girl. Tell everybody how can they reach you? What's your website address? Let me put it on the ticker, so that people
Absolutely,
can.
absolutely. So you can reach me at Scene on IG at Equity Empower underscore. I'm
Okay.
also known as the Vice Life Coach, so you can find my business page as the Vice Life Coach. We're there as a risk. I'm at work now, so as you can see, I'm calling out of my car, but I'm basically a risk manager as well. So anything risk management as it relates to cannabis, I do risk management and industry consulting, as well as our website is equityempower.org. You can look us up on IG and or our website and find out more about our resource fair that Elizabeth and I are putting together at the end of the year. I mean, at the end of the month, excuse me, February 28th. It'll be in the South Shore community in Chicago. And I do have an announcement. I just want to say that KJ and I have recently joined forces, and he has joined the board of Sing. So he is joining us as the Chief Executive Strategy Officer, and so we are excited to have him and just really are serious about this work. So please reach out to us in Chicago. And we're looking forward to joining forces with M for MM so that we can get this campaign going and make this a national conversation about as these states roll out how important social equity and equitable opportunities are for small business owners and the communities that deserve to be impacted. Thank you for
Absolutely.
having me.
Well, congratulations, KJ. And Belisha is on the board at MCBA, which if anybody ever tell you that M for MM or MCBA be beefing, it's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lot of lies that's going around. Don't believe it. We love on MCBA and love the great work they're doing. So congratulations on that. We love seeing. Let me tell you something from Roz, from my perspective, I believe in working with my sister organizations. I don't care came in first, who came in second. I cannot do this alone. We cannot do this alone. It is us coming together, and it's such a beautiful thing by having folks. Elizabeth, tell people how they can get in contact with you. Give them, spit the ballistics. Let them know where you are and how we can make sure people stay connected.
Yes, please follow along the craft grower journey on our website, illinoiscraftgrower.com, ilcraftgrower.com. I'm very active on
Is ilcraftgrower.com?
.com. Yes.
Okay, got it.
I'm very
Got it.
active on LinkedIn. I'm also the Canna Marketer on Instagram. And I really want to close off with saying that, we are at a pivotal time and it is a time to be hopeful and we are better together and in numbers. And I think ultimately what's going to matter the most is not how many Black and Brown people have a license, but how much of the market that we own. So with that,
Yes.
we'll collectively power through.
That's right. The cooperative economics is critical, and it's not about the license, the paper. It's about the actual dollars. Economically, how much are we creating in revenue, and how much are we putting back into our communities? And if we have a license, but we're not even having the potentiality of creating revenue because we don't have infrastructure and we don't have access to capital to build it out, it don't mean about crap. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. I think you're spot on. You guys, listen, I have such the bombest show with the most special people, and I just want you guys to know how much I appreciate you, how happy happy to have you on here. I know Belisha had to walk off. We're gonna figure out how do we stay connected. Elizabeth, make sure you tag me, you and Belisha. Let's talk and see how M4MM can support at the end of the month. Be it if we have anybody that can be there, be it if we put some financial support to your way to help doing it. We're so committed. So make sure you let me know, okay?
Absolutely. We're linking up after. Such a pleasure. Thank y'all.
It's so good to see you. You make me recall all of our fun times that we had during the boot camp in 2019, and I'm super proud of you. I always have a special place in my heart. And Ken, now you're part of the M4MM family too as well. So happy to connect with you, brother. And best of luck in everything that you're doing. We're gonna make sure we put your book information on our website as well. Go. Let me do this. If you guys don't know, go to m4mm.org. We have a freemium membership. You have to pay not a dime for it, but it gets you connected. It puts you in place of knowing what's going on with the organization, what things you could take advantage of. And then if you do want to do $150 for the year, you're able to have more access. And we want to promote this brother's book. So if you guys didn't know, if you didn't see, Ken has a book. I'm going to put it on the screen again because I think it's super dope. Is this Ken? Is this your store right here? Is it? It's always
Yeah,
KJ
yeah.
Talk.
Yes, that's the my landing page store. It'll take you to the Amazon link where you'll be able to purchase there. I also have a free resource. It's like the 10 steps to enter in the cannabis industry. And also
Mm-hmm.
I'll just be building a wealth of resources that individuals will be able to go to and ultimately be a part of this network. And so just come correct because I'm coming with the best opportunities and I would like to put my network, especially veterans as well. I didn't have the opportunity to speak on veterans, but I'm a disabled veteran. And there are a lot of health benefits to understanding cannabis, and there are also a lot of transitioning veterans looking for great opportunities. So that's my veteran plug. But please, I appreciate any support, and I just thank you again for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And let me piggyback on your veteran plug. It's critical that we take care of our veterans, especially those veterans coming from the Black and Brown community, because the access to resources you think is equal across the board, it's not. And they also need our support. And so we have a veterans program with M4MM. I'm trying to breathe more life into it. So let's KJ, let's get you plugged in, and man, let's love on our veterans, especially as coming from our community. Okay. All right, guys. I see you on the backside. Have a great weekend, everybody. You are now on with Can I Talk with Roz. Love you guys. Have a great day. Thanks, guys.